Okay, so you know how it is. It's a hot day, you're craving something sweet and refreshing, and you reach for that pint of ice cream in the fryer. It's
Yeah.
like the ultimate summer indulgence, am I right?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing quite like it.
But here's the thing I bet most people don't think about while they're enjoying those delicious scoops. What happens to all the stuff left over from making that ice cream? We've been digging into a mountain of research you sent over on sustainable business practices, and honestly, this whole ice cream waste thing, it's way more interesting than I ever imagined.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, we're all pretty aware of the waste we see every day, like packaging and leftover food. But then you have something like ice cream production, where there's this whole other level of waste that most people don't even see, especially when it comes to dairy byproducts.
Dairy byproducts. So
Yeah.
we're talking more than just like empty cartons and sprinkles ending up in landfills.
Oh, way more.
Like what?
We're talking things like whey.
Whey.
Yeah, it's the liquid that's left over after milk is curdled to make cheese or yogurt. And then there are milk solids that don't make it into the final product.
Huh.
And on top of that, you've got all the organic matter generated during production. Things like leftover ingredients, unused mixes, even milk that's past its prime. It all adds up. In fact, some of the research you sent over actually uses the term large-scale waste to describe what's coming out of the dairy industry, which is kind of alarming when you think about it.
Large-scale waste.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good. I have to admit, I never realized how much waste was involved. So it's not like they can just, like, pour gallons of leftover milk down the drain or something.
Exactly.
There are rules about that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting. See, unlike some other types of waste, organic waste doesn't just decompose neatly. As it breaks down, it releases these potent greenhouse gases.
Which is, obviously.
Yeah, terrible for the environment. Big contributor to climate change. And that's why the regulations around dairy disposal are especially strict.
So basically, if a company tries to cut corners with disposal, it's not just bad for the planet. It could actually mean legal trouble for them, too.
Exactly. We're talking fines, potential contamination issues, not to mention the hit a company's reputation could take if they're seen as careless with their waste, which, let's face it, nobody wants.
Yeah, not a good look. So it's like we've got this environmental ticking time bomb in the form of ice cream waste. What can these companies even do about it?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because there are companies out there tackling this head on.
Like this GreenFlow Environmental Solutions we saw.
Exactly.
Their whole website is all about sustainable ice cream waste management solutions.
Yeah, they're really focused on this specific niche. And what I find fascinating about them is that they understand that ice cream production has these unique waste challenges. So they've actually developed these very specialized solutions to address them.
Okay, so it's not just like a one-size-fits-all waste management approach.
Right, exactly. It's very tailored.
So like what kind of specialized solutions are we talking about here?
Well, for example, they have a whole system dedicated to dairy waste recycling.
Hold on, recycling dairy waste.
Uh-huh.
I'm having trouble picturing what that even looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually. Remember the way we were talking about earlier?
The leftover liquid.
Exactly. Well, GreenFlow can take that whey and through a specific process, they can actually turn it into fertilizer.
Wow, so instead of it being a waste problem, it actually goes back into the agricultural cycle.
Precisely, they're closing the loop on production.
That's incredible, turning waste into a resource like that.
It's a great example of what they call a closed loop system.
So they're eco-conscious, that's clear. But their website also mentions something called compliance assurance as a key benefit.
Right, because it's not just about being environmentally friendly, it's also about making sure these ice cream companies don't accidentally stray into illegal territory with their waste disposal.
Ah, so it's like a legal safety net too.
Exactly.
Okay, so GreenFlow makes sure they're following all those environmental rules and regulations. Like what kind of regulations are we talking about here?
Well, a big one is the Clean Water Act, which has very strict guidelines on what can and cannot be discharged into waterways.
Which would definitely apply to something like dairy waste.
Absolutely.
And this helps companies avoid fines and other penalties.
Exactly. It's about peace of mind as well.
Smart move. GreenFlow seems to have all the bases covered.
Ah.
They also mentioned partnering with this organization, One Tree Planted.
Oh, yeah, that's a really cool initiative.
It sounds nice, but are they really planting trees because of leftover ice cream?
It's true. For every service agreement they sign, GreenFlow plants a tree in partnership with One Tree Planted.
That's amazing.
It might seem like a small act, but it really speaks to their commitment to this bigger picture of sustainability.
Okay, I have to admit, that's pretty impressive. But let's be real for a second. I love a good environmental win, but at the end of the day, Businesses need practical reasons to invest in this kind of thing, so what's the bottom line for them?
You're right, it has to make business sense as well.
Exactly.
And this is where GreenFlow's customized plans really come into play.
Customized plans, okay.
So they actually work one-on-one with each company to create a waste management strategy that's specifically tailored to their needs and goals.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. It's very
I
collaborative.
like that. But beyond just cost savings, are there other tangible benefits for businesses?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's this growing consumer awareness of sustainability these days,
Oh, for sure.
especially among younger generations. There's a real desire to support businesses that align with their values.
Yeah, people are paying attention to that kind of thing.
And they're increasingly willing to pay more for products from companies with these demonstrably sustainable practices.
That's true. People notice that stuff, voting with their wallets.
Mm.
But going back to GreenFlow for a sec, this whole deep dive on ice cream waste really got me thinking. Is this kind of like specialization happening in other industries too?
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually highlights a really important trend that we're seeing as we become more aware of our environmental impact as a society. This demand for these super specialized solutions, it's popping up everywhere.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like what other industries are we talking about here?
Well, take the textile industry, for example. Did you know that tons and tons of fabric scraps end up in landfills every year?
It's funny you should mention that because I was literally just cleaning out my closet the other day, thinking about all the clothes I've gotten rid of over the years.
Right. And a lot of those clothes probably weren't even actually worn out. They were just, out of style or whatever.
Exactly.
So, yeah, huge waste problem there.
So are there companies out there tackling that too?
Oh, yeah, there are some really innovative companies out there. They're finding ways to recycle those scraps into new fibers. Some are even using them as building materials, believe it or not.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what they're doing.
And it's not just limited to fashion either, right?
Right. Another great example is the electronics industry. I mean, think about all the old phones and computers we all have lying around.
Oh, tell me about it. I've got a whole drawer full of old chargers and gadgets. It's actually kind of overwhelming when you stop and think about it.
Right. And the problem is those electronics, they contain these precious metals and other materials, and those materials can actually be really harmful if they just end up in a landfill.
Makes sense.
So now you have these companies that specialize in e-waste recycling. They can extract those valuable components, and then those components can be reused in new products.
Okay, so again, it's like closing the loop like we were talking about with GreenFlow. This has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
It's amazing to me how something like, as simple as a scoop of ice cream can be this gateway to understanding these bigger issues.
It really makes you think. It shows how even our smallest choices, like what we choose to buy at the grocery store, can have this ripple effect.
For sure, for sure. So for our listener who might be enjoying a cone as they listen to this, what's like the one big takeaway for them?
I think it's about being a more conscious consumer. The next time you're at the store, about to make a purchase, just take a moment to think about the company behind that product. Do they have sustainable practices in place? What happens to their waste? It might take a little extra effort, but it can really make a difference in the long run.
It's like you got to see past the marketing and all those eco-friendly labels and figure out what the company really stands for. Well, on that note, I guess we'll leave our listeners with this. What's in your shopping cart? And what happens to it when you're done with it?
It's something to think about.
Food for thought. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.